Alright guys, Tactical here again today, and I wanted to do something of a follow-up video to the video I did on Ban+Protect at the weekend. I talked in that video about how in Black Ops 3 there were so many different weapons used, and I was thinking about this, and in large part, well at least in some part, that was due to the Ban+Protect system, allowing teams to ban out the guns that the enemy was really good at, or that they didn't like particularly for whatever reason, but there were a lot of deeper reasons within the game why the weapon balance was so good. And the weapons we saw in competitive were all over the place. You know, the M8 was probably the most commonly used. The Man of War was maybe the best one overall. You had the HVK that was pulled out a lot. The Shiva was used if it wasn't banned. The XR2 was used when the M8 was banned, and even some people would use it regardless. The ICR was even used by Octane at times. The only assault rifle we never really saw was the KN-44. So I wanted to go through today what it's looking like in Black Ops 4 and what they seem to have taken a step back from the Black Ops 3 gun balance, because of course at some point I will talk about SMGs versus assault rifles and the fact that ARs are super dominant in this game as it is right now compared to Black Ops 3, but I also wanted to talk about how Treyarch designed the assault rifles so intelligently in Black Ops 3 to mean that so many of them were viable, and we saw so many of them in competitive play, you wouldn't have even needed Ban+Protect. There were so many personal preferences. People preferred the HVK over the Man of War over certain maps, and on evac you'd often see the HVK pulled out. On a larger map like Fringe, the M8, the Man of War, the Shiva even was a bit more common. So mostly I want to focus on the assault rifles. The SMGs also, to some extent, the VMP was clearly the dominant one. The Vesper was around quite some time towards the start of the game, and also when they rebuffed it a few months down the line. And then, after the game has even finished being out, they nerfed the VMP, so now the Kuda's become a little bit more viable. The Pharaoh was even viable with rapid fire. We saw a lot of different guns be brought out. Even the Weevil was used at some points in competitive play. So the SMG balance was slightly less good to some extent, but it's always more difficult to balance the SMGs when you have multiple different damage ranges, which is what I want to talk about in Black Ops 4. So it's a bit more statistics based, but like if you enjoy, subscribe if you are new as always, and let's get into it. So these are the stats provided by Marvel 4. I don't want to really bore you on the stats, but Treyarch on the whole designed the weapons very simplistically. We'll actually have a look at this chart first. I got this off Reddit, I'll link it down in the description box below. This is the overall, these weapons are ranked by overall average time to kill. But firstly, let's have a look at the bullets to kill. Now, this doesn't stretch beyond 50 meters, and quite often the ranges would drop after 50 meters. But we'll have a look at the XR2. This kills in 3 bullets all the way out to, the range was 38 meters, then it goes to 4. We look at the Shiva here, this kills at 2 all the way out to 50, and then it became 3-shot kill. The KN's a little bit different. This dropped off at about 19 meters, which I think is one of the reasons why it wasn't used. Then you have the Man of War that kills in 3 shots all the way out to 38 again. The HVK killed in 4 shots all the way out to 50 meters. So this is a very similar thing to what they did with the LMGs in Black Ops 3. So if we scroll down a little bit here, the BRM. Now obviously this is a little bit different because Black Ops 4 has 150 health, Black Ops 3 has 100 health, but the BRM does 40 damage up close, and after some range with just 5,000 units, which is just ridiculously long, you'd never really get in a gunfight this far away. It's like 150 meters or something like that. Then it dropped down to 30, so effectively the BRM was always a 3-shot, the Dingo was always a 4-shot, the Gorgon was always a 2-shot, and basically all they did was they just adjusted the rate of fire values, which you can see over here, 517, 722, 327. They simply adjusted those to the amount of bullets it took to kill to come up with a very balanced situation where the guns have very similar time to kills. We look back at this chart, okay, they obviously don't have very similar time to kills, but in large part the Gorgon is so high up because it kills in 2 bullets, and the first bullet can say to have registered instantly because you're not accounting for reaction time. So, you know, effectively the time to kill of snipers or shotguns can be 0. So that's why the Gorgon's a little bit inflated. But when you look down here, the Shiva, the KN, the Man of War, the HVK, all super close in terms of their overall time to kills, which are listed on the right hand side here, but the average time to kill of all these guns is super similar, and that's for the same reasons as for the LMGs. It was such a clever thing they did, it was super simplistic. All they had to do was say, okay, the M8, this will deal 30 damage up close, and then it will drop to 22. The reason why it goes to 29 here is due to hardcore. They wanted it to not be a one-shot kill in hardcore after certain ranges, but realistically for core game modes, it did 30 damage out to 38 meters, then it dropped off to 22, so 4 to 5 shot kill. The KN was a little bit different, dropping off much earlier, which is why it was definitely overshadowed by the Man of War that did 40 damage all the way out to 38 meters. The ICR was somewhat similar in that extent, the HVK was also somewhat similar. And what they did was just tweak the figures of the rate of fire and the damage to get to a point where pretty much all the guns are performing very similarly in terms of average time to kill. Then they would put tweaks to the gun. So the HVK, had a little bit of circular recoil. The Man-O-War had a little bit more of that kind of recoil. And also they had other features. So a few months down the line, they nerfed the Man-O-War's aim down sight speed and they nerfed its reload time. And pretty much what they did was every weapon was very similar on the base of it. The KN-44 was a little bit different with that shorter range, largely why it wasn't used because it was overshadowed by the other weapons. But they all had their kind of own features. The Shiva wasn't actually ridiculous in terms of its time to kill output, but it was a one-shot gun. And if we look at the time to kill statistics, the XR2 and the M8 are really high because if you hit the whole of your burst, then you can kill them within the burst and get a really high time to kill. But realistically, you can put these around the level of the Man-O-War and the HVK when you consider the burst delay, because this obviously doesn't do that. So overall, all the weapons in terms of time to kill were incredibly well balanced, and it was great the simplicity they had where, okay, this is a 4-shot out to this range, then it's a 5-shot, this is a 3-shot out to this range, then it's a 4-shot, and the ranges were very similar at 30 to 50 meters, and only small tweaks were made to the weapon. So this, okay, we'll give this a little bit more recoil, we'll give the ICR very minimal recoil, but that wasn't really enough in the hands of a pro to get people to use that over the other ones, apart from maybe guys like Octane. Then of course you had the M8 and the XR2, which were very viable as the burst rifles, which we don't really have in Black Ops 4. They did a similar thing with the SMGs as well to some extent. Obviously this is harder to do because when we look at the statistics here for the VMPs on this line, okay, it's a 4-shot, then it's a 5-shot, then it's a 6-shot. And the Vesper's a similar thing, 4, 5, 6. So it's very difficult to get the same time to kill values for different weapons. And with SMGs, they're designed to be harder to use to some extent. They have more recoil, like the Vesper's very difficult to control outside of close range. So you have to very well balance the recoil with the amount of damage your weapon's going to do. But I thought they did a relatively good job in Black Ops 3 as well. But just the assault rifle balance was unparalleled for any other Call of Duty I think I've ever played. Black Ops 2 didn't even come close. The M8 and the AR-94, I guess, were far and away the best. I guess you can throw the Scar H in there, but Black Ops 2 was by far and away the best assault rifle balance I've ever seen, and to some extent SMG balance as well. So let's look at what Black Ops 4 has done in this situation. So they've gone away from the model to some extent, and what you would expect from the Black Ops 3 situation is the ICR, okay, does 37 damage. Now of course we're scaling these up because it's 150 health overall, but it does 37 damage to 45 meters, then down to 29, which makes it a 5 to 6 shot kill. Pretty reasonable on the Black Ops 3 spectrum, I guess. Now the KN-57, somewhat similar to the KN-44, it does this damage up close, then after 10 or so meters it drops down, and then it goes all the way to a 6-shot kill. And it also has a lower rate of fire than the ICR, so unless you're within very close range, within like 10 meters or so, it's not worth using the KN-57 over the ICR in Black Ops 4 in pretty much any situation, similar ways to where the KN-44 was overshadowed in Black Ops 3. Then you have the Rampart. This is like your Scar type weapon. And the only thing that makes this gun good is high caliber 2 if you get it unlocked where you can shoot them in the upper chest and actually kill in 3 shots up close, which is really, really strong. But outside of that, for competitive play at least, it's really not that viable. Its range is only 25 meters compared to, I guess you could compare this weapon to the Man-O-War in Black Ops 3. Man-O-War had this similar range of 38 meters, where it could kill in 1 shot less than the less generous assault rifles. And also it has far more kick than the ICR to the point where you basically don't see the Rampart in competitive play at all. We look at what weapons we see at the moment in competitive. It's the Maddox and occasionally the ICR. You see a few ICRs, a lot of Maddoxes, everything else is not used. So in the current state you're seeing 2 assault rifles used, compared to in Black Ops 3, even without Ban+Protect, you would have seen at least 4. So the Vapor, they even nerfed this very recently as well. Well, mainly the nerfs were to do with high caliber, which of course isn't allowed in competitive. But once again, it's got a weird damage structure where it does 37 to 32. I think a lot of this was to do with the headshot damage on the weapon, but it's a 5 to 6 shot kill with significantly less rate of fire than the Maddox. So really, the Maddox outclasses the Vapor in most respects. The only ranges where the Vapor could beat it is within 18 to 30 meters when the Vapor kills in 5 shots and the Maddox kills in 6. But even then, considering the time to kill difference, you can see here on the right, TTK of the Maddox is down at 0.4. And none of the assault rifles can even match this, and the ones that get somewhat close, the Rampart and the KN, they have their other drawbacks in terms of a little bit dodgy recoil, and the Vapor, while statistically it's not bad, the rate of fire really costs it at some range, and its recoil is maybe even a little bit dodgier than the Maddox's at times. So the Maddox right now just absolutely runs the game, and the ICR you see from time to time, largely because it has the double grip attachment, which makes it far more viable in certain circumstances than something like the Maddox. But if it didn't have that, I think the Maddox would basically be used universally. Right now we're barely seeing any SMGs. So if I was to have a quick solution to this, I think the Vapor and the KN, they may not be used at all, but I would make some changes to the Rampart to make it more viable. I think I'd bump up the rate of fire slightly, and I'd increase this 4-shot kill range to the point where it actually could be a man-of-war type weapon, because the way I see it right now, the ICR is just like the ICR from Black Ops 3, but significantly better, because it has a higher rate of fire, and it has much less recoil than it had in Black Ops 3, especially when you have the Grip 2 attachment. The Maddox is basically the HVK, very much a do-it-all weapon. Considering the map seems to be smaller on this game as well, it's even more powerful than, you know, the HVK counterpart in Black Ops 3 was. And then the Rampart could be your man of war, but right now it just doesn't have the damage output or the time to kill to compete, especially when the range of it is somewhat lacking compared to something like the ICR. Let's have a quick look at the tactical rifles, because this is where we find our M8 and XR2 equivalent. So this is more what I'm talking about. This follows definitely the Black Ops 3 system, especially with the Swordfish. It does this damage up to 55 meters, then it does this damage 5 to 6. The ABR does this amount, surprisingly only to 23 meters. This is why we don't really see the ABR used at all anymore. It's really good in the beta, but now we don't barely see it anymore because this range is so low here. After only 23 meters, it's dropping down to a 5-shot kill, and you only have 3 rounds in your burst. It's pretty ridiculous, frankly. It does still have a higher overall time to kill potential than a lot of the other assault rifles, and the Swordfish with the Pentaburst actually goes all the way down to a 0.27, which is super quick, but you have to connect all 5 bullets. So the Swordfish with the Pentaburst is actually somewhat viable, but as it's a boots on the ground game and not a jetpack game like Black Ops 3 was, it's much more difficult to be mobile and active with something like the Swordfish. You definitely have to post up and try and hit all 5 bullets in the burst, and right now the ICR with the double grip, and it's more viable up close, the ICR, because it's full auto, you don't really see the Swordfish being pulled out at all because the ICR just outclasses it, and you're never going to want a Swordfish in the kind of engagements that the Maddox is engaging in. So right now there's definitely some questions about whether either of these will be pulled out in competitive play. The Auger may also have its place, but I think it's only really viable with the Operator mod that it has on it, and I'm not sure that's even allowed in the competitive rule set. And even then it kills in 3 shots at a very minimum, which isn't exactly spectacular for a semi-auto rifle. So let's have a look at the SMGs, because this is where a lot of people see the problem as lying. I wasn't really planning on touching on this, but we'll go to it anyway, because let's compare back to Black Ops 3. We look at the very first row here. The SMGs, they're in grey colour, 4-shot kill, 4-shot kill. The Pharaoh even had a 3-shot kill close range. Weevil, 4, Razorback, 4, Vespa, 4. Up close, 4-shot kill. Very similar to what the ARs are having. Okay, we had a couple 3-shots here. The Sheath was a bit of an exception. 4 shots for the M8, 3 shots for the XR2, the burst weapon. Very similar in that regard. Let's have a look at Black Ops 4. 6 shots to kill. Point blank, every SMG in the game is a 6-shot kill. This time to kill of the Spitfire, the fastest firing SMG in the game, at point blank range is only 0.06 faster than the Maddox will kill because it only takes 5 shots. The Sorg, 0.39. This is 0.01, 1/100th of a second quicker than the Maddox will kill you at point blank range with the best SMG in the game right now. This is why quite often I'm just getting destroyed by the Maddox point blank where I feel like I haven't missed. It's probably because I have a little bit of a ping, and that makes all the difference in these kind of gunfights. Even 1/100th of a second can cost you a gunfight with the best SMG in the game against an assault rifle. So I'm pretty mind blown why these are 6 shots to kill, and you see the difference in the ranges again. Spitfire even goes out to 9, the Sword goes out to 9 as well, which makes it so much harder to balance all these weapons, because in Black Ops 3 it went from 4, 5, 6, that's pretty much it. So you had to balance 3 ranges. Whereas in this game, you have to balance the 6-shot range, the 7-shot range, the 8-shot range, and then how far it should be from the 9-shot range. Apart from the MX-9 and the GKs, which is just frankly ridiculous. You're never going to hit 9 shots of range, especially with how difficult the SMGs are to use. So I'm pretty disappointed in how this has gone for Treyarch, really, because they're just making what I find the most fun gun to use, the SMGs, they're making them super weak, and it seems like they're just catering to the newer players, catering to the noobs. That's what I see the specialists as being as well. just giving people easy kills, and, you know, it's no wonder that the easiest weapons to use in the game are also the most powerful in the assault rifles right now. You look at these time to kill values, you average these out, there's nowhere near what the assault rifles are offering. Like, these numbers are so much lower on the right-hand side than what the SMGs do. And don't forget, these figures are point-blank range figures. This doesn't even take into account what happens when you get a little bit down range. So if the SMGs are barely winning the fights up close, and yes, of course, they do have the movement advantages to some extent, but honestly, that's kind of counteracted by the recoil, because you put the Sorg out of a few meters away, and you're really struggling. And even then, you've got to hit 6 shots point-blank, your hip fire might be a little bit dodgy, and it just doesn't happen for you on the day. So if we're going to see any real SMGs used, because right now the meta's probably 1 ICR, 1 Sorg, and then like 3 Maddoxes, which I really don't like seeing the Maddox constantly pop up in the kill feed, just like the K-bar from Infinite Warfare. Honestly kind of looks similar as well. Like, I feel like Treyarch are mugging us off here. So, like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and look, the weapon balance in Black Ops 4 isn't terrible. The balance between the assault rifles is okay, you know, 2 of them are being used at least. Similar to Infinite Warfare, you know, you had the NV4, the K-bar, and then the ERAD was used. Basically nothing else came out the entire year, apart from some people use that Karma 45 SMG instead of the ERAD. Here we're basically seeing the Sorg, and I think they've shot themselves in the foot really. They had such a good model in Black Ops 3 of how they balanced the assault rifles, and the SMGs they did a really good job of as well. But as it stands right now, the tactical rifles, the burst assault rifles are barely being used at all, largely due to the small nature of the maps and how difficult it is to move around with a clunky gun like a Swordfish, where you need to hit 5 bullets of your burst to have a good idea of getting the kill over something like a Maddox. The fact that the SMGs kill in 6 shots up close as well is pretty ridiculous, when the Maddox kills in 5 and has a very comparable rate of fire to something like the Cordite or the MX9 for that matter. So I feel like Treyarch have managed to take a step back in this regard as well, which is disappointing to see, because Black Ops 3's weapon balance was just so good, not only for a public match standpoint, but from the competitive standpoint as well in terms of variety, but it doesn't seem like we're going to get that this year, which is certainly unfortunate. So thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I'll see you next time.